After rebirth, the eldest sister rushed to marry the green snake. In the previous life, the eldest sister was chosen to be the crown princess because of her enchanting looks and sweet feminine scent. The beastly emperor also betrothed me to the crown prince as a concubine. Resentful, the eldest sister forced a love potion down my throat that very night and delivered me to the bed of the green snake prince, born of a palace maid. In the end, after receiving 30 lashes, I was forced to marry the green snake prince. To everyone's surprise, after marriage, my elder sister and the crown prince only gave birth to ordinary little snakes, while I bore the green snake, a dragon serpent. After the dragon serpent was born, the emperor deposed the crown prince and decreed that the throne would be passed to the dragon serpent upon its coming of age. Consumed by jealousy, my elder sister sneaked into my palace, stripped the young dragon serpent of its dragon tendons, and removed all its scales. Dragon Treasure died in agony, and then she used his sinews to strangle me to death. When I opened my eyes again, it was the day the beastly emperor arranged our marriage, and she insisted on marrying the green snake. I knew she had been reborn, just like me, but this time, she couldn't even give birth to a leech. The beastly emperor betrothed my elder sister Susan to the crown prince as his consort, while granting me the position of concubine to serve the prince. His intention was for me to enter the palace and dutifully attend to my elder sister and the crown prince. Little did he know, upon hearing this, my sister's face twisted with venomous resentment, and my parents' expressions darkened. That evening, my personal maid brought me a cup of tea, saying it would calm my restless mind, as I had been absent-minded lately. Moments after drinking the tea, my limbs grew weak, and my body burned with fever. Mother secretly arranged for a small sedan chair and instructed the bearers to deliver me to Prince George's mansion. Jenny, don't blame your mother. How could you be worthy of sharing a husband with your elder sister? I've heard that green snake is quite handsome too. Tonight, do your best to please him. Becoming his principal wife would be far better than being the crown prince's concubine. The green snake mother mentioned was George, born to a palace maid. His lowly status made him unpopular with the emperor. Though handsome in appearance, he was aloof by nature and frequently bedridden with illness. The next day, mother deliberately had people spread the news of my illicit affair with George. The emperor flew into a rage and ordered me to be publicly whipped 30 times, beaten half to death. I was carried into the prince's mansion like a dead dog. A month later, George and I hastily held our wedding. On that same day, Susan had a grand wedding, becoming the much-envied crown princess. Out of consideration for my father's status as the prime minister, though I became George's principal wife, he regarded me as shameless and never showed me any affection again. People in the capital would sneer at the mere mention of my name. My reputation was in ruins. Perhaps heaven took pity on me, for I became pregnant that time and gave birth months later to a dragon python, the symbol of divine beasts. The dragon python is the noblest existence among the beast python clan, and the last one born had been 300 years ago. Upon learning this, the Python Emperor was overjoyed and directly bestowed upon the child the title of imperial grandson of the dragon python. I, as the mother, also received numerous rewards due to my son's elevated status. My elder sister gave birth 2 months later than I did. On the day of her delivery, she specifically had the crown prince inform the emperor, claiming she would surely bear a child even more noble than the dragon python. Unfortunately, after struggling through a day and night of labor, she only gave birth to a frail little snake. As Dragon Treasure grew, the Python Emperor's fondness for him only deepened. At this time, the crown prince, like George of old, grew increasingly frail, confined to his sick bed day after day. The emperor simply deposed him to allow him to recuperate properly and issued a decree that upon his abdication, the throne would be directly passed to the imperial grandson. Dragon Treasure, elder sister Susan, unable to bear the injustice, pestered the crown prince daily to mate, hoping to give birth to a dragon serpent. Yet, all she bore were increasingly sickly little snakes, one after another. When Dragon Treasure was 6 years old, he began learning to seclude himself for cultivation. However, Susan had hidden herself in his training grounds beforehand. As he sat quietly absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, she bound him with a divine whip, extracted his dragon sinews, and slowly plucked off every scale from his body. Dragon Treasure died in agony, while I remained unaware. She came under the pretext of visiting me and, seizing the moment when I was off guard, used Dragon Baby's dragon tendon to strangle me to death. When I opened my eyes again, my elder sister beside me kowtowed heavily, her forehead striking the ground. Your Majesty, I beg you to revoke the imperial decree. I refuse to marry the crown prince. In this life, I wish only to wed the third prince, George. I implore your majesty to grant me this wish." Looking at Susan's resolute expression, I knew she had also been reborn. Father, who had been sitting in the lower seat, knelt beside my elder sister in terror upon hearing this. Trembling, father also kowtowed to the ground. "I beg your majesty to forgive Inger for her offense. It was my failure in discipline." As he spoke, he tugged at my elder sister's sleeve, signaling her to quickly plead for mercy, but my elder sister only stubbornly raised her head, her gaze resolute and her attitude unwavering, as if she were ready to face death without fear. I shifted my gaze to the other key figure of the day, the crown prince of the Beast Feral clan, Spencer. Spencer's face darkened the moment he heard my elder sister reject the arranged marriage, his brilliant eyes instantly dimming. It was clear he felt somewhat dejected and hurt. He looked at Susan, who was kneeling on the ground and unwilling to spare him even a glance, sighed faintly, and then stepped down from his high position as crown prince to kneel on the ground as well. "Father, the one I truly admire is none other than Jenny, the second daughter of Prime Minister Smith. I beseech you to grant me this marriage." The entire hall erupted in murmurs of astonishment. In the beast-wild continent, males outnumber females, and females are typically treated with preferential care, but this privilege does not extend to someone like me. She appeared thin and frail, with an almost complete absence of feminine allure, clearly not the type to bear robust offspring, yet my elder sister, born just 10 minutes before me, was the exact opposite. She was enchantingly beautiful, with voluptuous curves and an intoxicatingly sweet feminine scent that enveloped her. Whenever she stepped outside, that scent would draw hordes of males, who would frolic around her in excitement. The emperor was still seething with rage. "This is an imperial decree of marriage. How dare you question it?" However, he did not immediately dismiss the crown prince's request. Instead, he said solemnly, "We shall bestow Jenny upon you as a concubine. And you shall speak no more of this." This was, in effect, giving the crown prince away to save face. The crown prince had no choice but to kowtow in gratitude before returning to his seat. This was just like the previous life. I remained the crown prince's concubine. Then, the emperor turned his gaze toward my father, who was kneeling on the ground. "Prime Minister Smith, if you cannot properly discipline your eldest daughter Susan, perhaps you should entrust her to the Empress. The palace maids under Her Majesty's command will surely teach her a lesson on your behalf." Father naturally knew the methods of those palace eunuchs and matrons. Trembling like a sieve, he repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. "Your Majesty, spare me. I will discipline her strictly upon my return." Inside the Prime Minister's residence, "Jenny, drink this bowl of calming medicine and rest early." Mother ordered someone to bring a bowl of dark, murky medicinal soup before me. Exactly the same as the aphrodisiac from my previous life, exuding a nauseatingly cloying sweetness. I was just about to take it when Susan knocked it out of my hand. "You're not allowed to drink it. Get out." Susan scolded me sharply. I stood motionless. "Mother, I don't care. I just want to marry the prince." Susan whined tearfully, throwing a tantrum. She had been making a scene for nearly 2 hours. "If you don't marry the crown prince but that lowly prince instead, wouldn't that just be letting someone else take advantage?" As she spoke, Mother shot me a meaningful glance. "You are the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's household, noble in status. Naturally, you can only be matched with someone equally noble, His Highness the Crown Prince. It's the Emperor's decree for the marriage, and there's no room for discussion." Mother spoke with gentle persuasion, yet showed no signs of softening her stance. Seeing her mother's firm attitude, Susan's eyes darted around twice before she swallowed her sobs. When her mother saw she had stopped crying, thinking she had finally come to her senses, she comforted her with sweet nothings before leaving Susan's courtyard. Half an hour later, a rustling sound came from Susan's courtyard, and I crouched down to eavesdrop. "Are the sedan bearers ready? I just drank the aphrodisiac tonic and must hurry to the prince's mansion tomorrow. Help spread the word about this, tonight. Sleep in my bed so Mother won't notice, understand?" Susan whispered to her personal maid. So, she was planning to walk the same path I took in my past life, but this time, I wonder if the Emperor's 30 lashes will quell his anger. After all, in my previous life, I was merely casually bestowed to the Crown Prince as a concubine, while Susan was personally designated by the Emperor as the Crown Princess. The next day, Susan and George knelt side by side in the Grand Hall. Behind them at an angle knelt their ashen-faced father and mother. The Grand Hall was filled with a sweet fragrance emanating from Susan. Perhaps the scent of her was even more intense now that she had experienced intimacy for the first time. George gazed at her with what could only be described as infatuation. Even the court officials standing in the grand hall narrowed their eyes in enjoyment. "Your Majesty, this humble subject truly admires the prince. I beg your Majesty to grant us your blessing. I am willing to accept any punishment," Susan said softly yet resolutely, her voice filled with determination. George also kowtowed and said, "Father, this is your son's fault. It was I who admired the young lady of the Smith family and momentarily erred. I am willing to accept any punishment from you, Father. However, we have already consummated our relationship, and there are rumors circulating in the capital. I implore you, Father, to consider the dignity of the royal family and grant us your blessing." He was indeed a clever man, invoking the emperor's most valued concern, the dignity of the royal family. The crown prince is destined to inherit the throne. How could he possibly marry a woman who has already been intimate with another man? The emperor glared furiously, trembling with rage. "Very well, you treat our decree as a mere jest. Today, we shall grant you your wish." With that, he turned to the attendant by his side. "Draft the decree. We hereby strip George of his princely title, demoting him to a common snake man. His princely status shall never be restored. As for Susan, since she is willing to marry him, she shall be bestowed upon him as his wife." Upon hearing this, their mother fainted on the spot, while their father nearly collapsed to the ground. Susan's face turned pale, but after a moment of thought, she bit her lip and kowtowed. "Thank you for your grace, your Majesty. I only care for George as a person, not for his status as a prince." As long as she could give birth to the divine beast symbolized by the dragon serpent, what did it matter if the prince was restored to his position? She would surely enjoy endless wealth and luxury. Moreover, if her child ascended the throne as emperor, would the title of prince still hold any significance? Upon hearing this, George was deeply moved, his infatuation growing even stronger. Upon hearing Susan's words and observing the kneeling pair before him, the emperor sensed genuine affection between them. He let out an almost imperceptible sigh, his stern expression softening slightly. "In that case, you may continue to live in the previous royal residence, but from now on, George will only be a commoner and will no longer receive imperial rewards. You must take care of yourselves." The emperor showed unexpected leniency toward Susan, proof that beauty and sweet feminine charm always secure preferential treatment wherever they go. In time, should Susan bear a dragon serpent heir, who could doubt the emperor would restore favor upon George and her? Unfortunately, her clever scheme backfired. This time, not only would she fail to bear a snake, she probably couldn't even produce a leech. "My elder sister and I were scheduled to be married on the same day. Fearing she might suffer in the prince's household, our parents prepared a lavish dowry for her. As for me, just like in my previous life, I received only a few simple trunks. In my previous life, my mother said, you were already intimate with that prince before your wedding. These dowry chests are only given out of respect for the royal family. In this life, my mother said, now that you're marrying the crown prince as a concubine, you'll never want for food or drink. Why should we prepare a dowry for you? These few chests are just for show." Because Susan insisted on marrying the lowly George, her father and mother wore gloomy expressions, yet they still couldn't bring themselves to scold her. Susan was their pride and the apple of their eye. If she married the dragon serpent crown prince, she would become the future queen of the serpent clan. But now she could only marry the deposed prince. Where would there be any chance of rising in the future? She might even live worse than a palace stewardess. Seeing our mother constantly depressed, my elder sister pulled her aside and whispered a few words in her ear. Mother glanced at me and said, "Are you sure? What if that wretched girl becomes queen in the future? Don't regret it then." My elder sister cooed, "Mother, don't worry. I might already carry the royal heir in my womb. Everything is going according to my plan." On the night of the wedding, drums and gongs resounded loudly. Before kneeling to bid farewell to my father and mother, my elder sister whispered in my ear, "Jenny, don't think that just because you're marrying the beast prince and I'm now a commoner's wife, the position of Empress Dowager will be yours in the future. It can only be mine." I smiled without saying a word, kowtowed once to my parents seated in the honored position, then turned and left. From that moment on, everything of the Smith family had nothing more to do with me. Susan thought the dragon seed came from George's body, so she was willing to gamble all her wealth and status to marry him, but she didn't know, the reason I could give birth to a dragon python was because I had a beast python's inner core within me. All along, my frail and emaciated appearance was due to my body nurturing the inner core. Once I became pregnant, the inner core would automatically merge with the placenta, requiring me to provide double the nutrients to sustain it. But as long as I give birth, my body will return to normal. and Susan also has an inner elixir. However, her inner elixir is the complete opposite of mine. It absorbs all vital energy to nourish her, making her beautiful and exuding a pleasant fragrance. In our past life, the reason she couldn't even give birth to a python and only produced sickly little snakes was because the inner elixir absorbed all her nutrients. These two inner elixirs were obtained by Mother after kneeling in supplication before the Python tribe's shaman. At the time, she only heard that one elixir required nourishment through the body, which would suppress beauty and feminine scent, while the other would enhance beauty and emit a pleasant feminine fragrance. Without hesitation, Mother made her decision on how to distribute them. Her mind was wholly preoccupied with how Susan could use the elixirs to climb step by step to a high position. As for the other conditions the shaman mentioned afterward, she didn't hear a single word. In the previous life, the crown prince, who had always been robust, became bedridden with illness after marrying Susan. Someone as frail as George would likely exhaust his vital essence within 2 years. Dozens of night pearls in the bridal chamber illuminated the room as bright as day. Unaware of the exact time, I only knew it had been dark for a long while as I sat dazedly on the edge of the bed. With a creak, the door opened, and a figure appeared before me. "Jenny," the voice was clear and gentle. Then the bridal veil was lifted, and I looked up to see the handsome and dignified Crown Prince Spencer. His expression appeared indifferent, showing no joy at taking a new bride. I guessed he probably still had my elder sister in his heart, after all. He had only chosen me out of helplessness, to fulfill the wishes of the one he truly loved. "Have you been hungry waiting for so long? I'll have the palace staff prepare some food for you," he asked expressionlessly, but before I could even open my mouth to reply, he directly instructed the attending maidservant beside him to prepare some easily digestible food. After the maidservant left, he stood up. I quickly rose as well, carefully bending at the waist to stand by his side, ready to serve him. Who knew he would lead me to the dressing table, press my shoulders, and make me sit on the round stool? He began to remove the heavy phoenix crown and hairpins from my head. "Your Highness, the maids can handle this later. You mustn't trouble yourself with such matters." I quickly prepared to stand up. He increased the pressure in his hand, pressing me back onto the stool, his voice still devoid of any emotion. "It's fine. Tonight, you marry me, I'm willing to remove your makeup for you." For some reason, my face flushed involuntarily. I recalled the night of my wedding to George in my past life. He had merely looked at me with disgust, unwilling to say even a word, and left without sharing the ceremonial wine with me. Even if Spencer appeared indifferent now, I found it somewhat easier to accept. The nanny brought 2 bowls of fine noodles, one for me and one for Spencer, saying it symbolized longevity and enduring happiness. I had thought Spencer would leave after finishing the noodles, assuming his visit to my place was merely a formality for the wedding night. To my surprise, after finishing the noodles, he ordered the servants to prepare for his washing up and then climbed onto the wedding bed on his own. Feeling somewhat awkward, I dawdled over my own washing up, reluctant to go to bed. At last, he grew impatient, waving the servants away. He rolled off the bed, scooped me up, and tossed me onto the mattress. The man before me now was utterly different from the indifferent one from moments ago. The blazing desire in his eyes seemed ready to consume me. How could the contrast be this stark? He chuckled softly, murmuring, "I didn't know Jenny could be so shy. Don't worry, I'll teach you slowly. You'll surely love it." He pressed me down beneath him, the crimson bed curtains tossed all night. These past 2 days, Spencer has been insatiable, tormenting me until my entire body aches every night. Only at dawn can I finally sleep, forcing me to rest until the sun is high in the sky each day. Fortunately, the Crown Prince's palace has only me as a concubine, with no principal wife yet, so I'm spared from morning courtesies. Otherwise, I might have perished without knowing why. The maids couldn't help covering their mouths to stifle giggles while dressing me, unable to hide my embarrassment. I could only pretend not to understand their teasing expressions. That day, while reading an illustrated book by the window, I overheard 2 young maids chatting as they dusted the ornaments. They say the woman His Highness married has already been diagnosed with pregnancy, just a few days after the grand wedding, and she's already with child. TSK, shoo, he's no longer a prince now, we can only call him Prince George. That incident between them was known throughout the Beastkin race. So it's no surprise she's pregnant. It turns out Susan was also pregnant from that time, but this has nothing to do with me. Just as I was immersed in the plot of the storybook, a maid came to report that Susan, the daughter of Prime Minister Smith, had come to visit. I thought about it and still had the servants show her in. She's quite clever, knowing to use the Smith family name. If she had just come as George's wife, the servants probably wouldn't even have announced her. Rather than calling it a visit, it's more like she came to show off. After entering the main hall, she fluttered her handkerchief and sat herself in the host's seat without invitation. The maids were about to reprimand her when I waved them away and took a seat below Susan. She curled her lips and smiled disdainfully, perhaps because I had always been cautious and restrained in the Smith family. Even now that I had become the Crown Prince's concubine, a status higher than hers, she still looked down on me. "Sister, I'm already pregnant. You and the Crown Prince should hurry up too," she said deliberately, stroking her still flat belly. I smiled and replied, "Thank you for your concern, elder sister. The Crown Prince is strong and healthy, so there's no need for you to worry. Instead, you should focus on feeding more tonics to Mr. George, otherwise, how could he possibly satisfy you?" Her face darkened, and her voice turned sharp. "Truly, someone of low breeding, even the words you speak are so vulgar. Though the words may sound blunt, the reasoning is sound. Elder sister, don't you think George falls short of the Crown Prince in every aspect, whether it's lineage, appearance, or even physical strength? In what way is the Crown Prince not superior to George?" Seemingly struck where it hurt, her face flushed crimson with anger. She had already been intimate with George and had been the Crown Princess in her past life. How could she not have compared the two? Furious, she reached out to strike me, but I caught her wrist and flung her aside, thinking she could act recklessly in my territory. Naturally, I wouldn't indulge her. She suddenly let out a cold laugh. "What's the use of being noble now? It all depends on who can give birth to a dragon serpent." She glanced up and down at my frail figure and sneered. "Don't let it be that when the time comes, little sister gives birth to an eel, shaming the imperial family. If the Crown Prince gets angry and orders your execution, let's see if you can still act as arrogant as you are today. You'd be better off spending your time on protecting your pregnancy rather than strutting around here showing off. Who knows if that thing in your belly will even make it to birth." Susan was so furious that she stood up and lunged at me, trying to hit me. I quietly sidestepped to avoid it. "Attendants, see the guest out. This princess is weary." I turned directly and walked toward the bedroom. The maidservant waiting at the door heard the order and immediately scurried in to grab Susan, half dragging and half pulling her out. I wiped the spot where I had touched her hand with a handkerchief, letting out a cold laugh. Let her be arrogant and domineering for a while longer. I want to watch her sink into despair with my own eyes. A month later, I was diagnosed with pregnancy. The Crown Prince was overjoyed. "Ever since I became pregnant, I've always felt that the child in my womb is my little dragon, probably because of the deep bond between mother and child. After becoming pregnant, I needed twice the usual nutrients to nourish my inner core, and my body grew increasingly weak. For some reason, this pregnancy was more painful than the last one, and the hunger pangs were even more intense. The first 2 months were manageable. But as the baby grew day by day, requiring more and more nutrients, I could barely walk normally and even breathing felt exhausting. Spencer was so anxious that he couldn't sleep at night. Since I was pregnant and unable to serve him in bed, the Empress originally intended to assign him 2 concubines to attend to him first, but he declined both. The Empress was furious, thinking that I had bewitched him into refusing to take concubines, just as the Empress was about to turn her anger on me. Spencer knelt down to explain. "Mother, please do not be angry. It is not that I do not wish to take a concubine, but I truly have unspeakable difficulties and lack the strength. During the last campaign in the Northwest, I injured my body. Jenny's pregnancy was likely a mercy from heaven. I am currently seeking renowned physicians far and wide. Once my body is fully recovered, it will not be too late to take a concubine." Spencer spoke in veiled terms, but in short, he was incapable. The Empress, however, understood. Her face turned pale and then flushed with anger. If the Crown Prince had a hidden ailment, the fewer who knew, the better. Otherwise, his position as heir would surely be lost. If word spread that he could not produce heirs, would it not be tantamount to an edict of abdication? From then on, the Empress voluntarily fell silent. If any concubine in the harem dared to mention sending concubines to the Crown Prince's residence again, she would first unleash a storm of fury. Over time, no one dared to bring it up again, and peace was finally restored. As my pregnancy became increasingly difficult, Spencer, unable to rest easy about me, simply feigned illness and requested leave from the Emperor. The Empress thought the Crown Prince was taking the opportunity to treat his hidden ailment and even considerately covered for him, no longer needing to handle government affairs. Spencer stayed by my side every day. He personally fed me, attended to my sleep, and watched me grow thinner day by day, so anxious that he seemed to wish he could bear the pregnancy for me. when Spencer was away, the palace matrons would often marvel to me, saying they had never seen a husband who doted on his wife so much. Yes, he was my husband, and my heart swelled with sweetness and happiness. Perhaps, this is what it means to have chosen the right person. I heard that after my elder sister became pregnant, my parents frequently visited her, bringing either precious medicinal tonics or various amusements to relieve her boredom. As for me, they never came even once. According to the servants' gossip, Susan grew increasingly radiant after her pregnancy, exuding such feminine allure that it could be sensed even outside the mansion. It was probably the inner elixir absorbing the fetus's nutrients that was sustaining her. In contrast, I had become almost skeletal, with high, protruding cheekbones and a frail frame supporting a huge belly, utterly terrifying and bizarre. In my previous life, after I became pregnant, George never once visited my courtyard. Although he was physically weak, he kept several beautiful concubines and spent his days frolicking with them, a classic case of being all talk and no action. By chance, he saw me pregnant and froze in shock. "How could you become so ugly?" From then on, he avoided me like the plague. In my past life, apart from that night when my mother forced me to drink an aphrodisiac wine, we never had any physical intimacy again. But my current state is even worse than in my past life, undoubtedly uglier and more terrifying. I hid, afraid to see Spencer, fearing he would despise me, but he seemed to understand my heart and directly pulled me into his embrace. "Jenny, don't worry. The child in your belly is also my child. How could I despise you for carrying my own child?" His eyes were filled with deep tenderness and affection. Indeed, he and George were never the same, and I shouldn't have been so narrow-minded. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of my elder sister's delivery. I was somewhat curious about what she would give birth to in this lifetime, so I sent a clever little maid to inquire outside George's residence, telling her to report back to me quickly with any news. Spencer laughed and said, "You're about to give birth yourself, yet you still have the mood to inquire about others' affairs." I replied, "Isn't that because eldest sister is the one you fancy? I was just going to check things out for you." Upon hearing this, Spencer looked somewhat embarrassed. "Don't talk nonsense. The only one I fancy is you. She's my sister-in-law." This isn't a joke to be made. Who would have thought the crown prince would also blush in embarrassment? Finding it amusing, I wanted to tease him even more. Just then, the baby in my womb suddenly turned, causing my belly to ripple like waves. "Quick, feel it, he's moving." I excitedly grabbed Spencer's hand and placed it on my belly, watching his expression shift from shock to pure happiness. "You have no idea how much your mother has suffered during this pregnancy for you. When you're born, if you don't behave, I'll definitely spank you hard." Spencer pretended to scold, directing his words at my belly. As if hearing him, the baby inside flipped even more vigorously. Counting the days, I have about 1 month left before giving birth to him. I'm about to meet my dragon baby again. Just as Spencer and I were feeling the baby flipping around in my belly, the maid I had sent out came back panting heavily. He's coming." The little maid was panting so heavily that I quickly had another servant girl pour her a cup of water. She gulped it down in one go, took a couple more breaths, and then said, "Word has spread everywhere. The daughter of Prime Minister Smith gave birth to a pitch-black monster. It didn't look like a snake or an eel, had scales, but its head was just a fleshy lump with no eyes or mouth. It was terrifying. And after that thing let out a few cries, it died." I heard the prince. No, I heard young Master George ordered his servants to burn it. When they set it on fire, thick, foul black smoke billowed out, making people vomit from the stench. Miss Susan was initially overjoyed to hear that the child she gave birth to had scales, but upon learning of the infant's death, she fainted on the spot. Hearing this, I was also startled. According to the maid's account, Susan's pregnancy seemed more like it had been cursed. I had thought the worst outcome would be a stillbirth, never expecting it to be a monster. Spencer, thinking I was frightened, scolded the young maid. "Why go into such detail? Simply say it was a monster. If the princess consort is frightened into harm, I'll hold you accountable." I quickly stopped him from randomly accusing others. "Your Highness, it has nothing to do with her words. I just feel sorry for my elder sister, but it won't affect the child in my womb. You all may leave first. I have something to discuss with His Highness." After saying this, I dismissed the pitiful-looking maidservant. After the maidservants left, I composed myself and said seriously to Spencer, "Don't you think the child Susan gave birth to is extremely abnormal?" Spencer shook his head. "On our beast continent, the types of births are inherently diverse. Women give birth to pythons, snakes, or eels. It's just that each person's fate is different." But what she gave birth to wasn't just a monster, it had scales and emitted a nauseating stench when burned. When I was with the Smith family, I read about it in an ancient text. The rat clan has a kind of dark magic that can make a man immensely powerful in that aspect, but it demands a sacrifice of flesh and blood. If one refuses to pay the price themselves, they can substitute it with their own flesh and blood, their offspring. Spencer frowned. Are you talking about George? He sacrificed his own child just for that kind of pleasure. I nodded. I can't leave the palace gates. If you see him, observe his complexion. If he looks unusually vibrant, he must have struck some unspeakable deal with the rat clan. If I were a man, I could somewhat understand George's perspective. Susan is beautiful and has strong desires. The feminine aura she exudes makes George crave mating with her constantly. Unfortunately, George himself is physically weak and can't last long. To keep the woman he loves, he doesn't hesitate to sacrifice his own child in exchange for a stronger body. Perhaps he thought that given his relationship with his elder sister, losing this pregnancy wouldn't matter much. Lose one, just have another later. But he didn't know that Susan married him precisely for the purpose of bearing dragon pythons. What feelings could she possibly have for him? Though the only benefit of his actions was that it allowed the elder sister's inner core to absorb more of his essence to nourish her. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Lately, my belly has been growing increasingly tight, feeling as if it could happen at any moment. I no longer have the energy to worry about Susan's affairs. Nothing else matters as much as my precious dragon baby. Spencer had long arranged for a midwife and royal physician, and he himself dared not leave my side for even a step. That day, I suddenly felt excruciating abdominal pain. My past life's experience told me it was time to give birth. The entire Eastern Palace was in a flurry of activity. I writhed in pain on the bed, too weak to even cry out. The imperial physician pricked countless acupuncture points on my body and brewed a ginseng tea made from a 1,000-year-old root to force-feed me, after which I regained some strength. From dawn until midnight, the agony persisted until finally, the midwife announced the baby was crowning and urged me to push harder. The imperial physician inserted several more needles into my acupoint to help alleviate some pain and boost my energy. Spencer was so frantic that he couldn't even maintain his human form, transforming directly into a python and flying around anxiously in the air. Finally, at the break of dawn, I gave birth to my python treasure. Oh no, in this lifetime. He wasn't even a dragon python, he was a divine dragon. The midwife froze in place for a long moment before finally wrapping the dragon baby in a swaddling cloth and announcing the good news outside. Your Highness, the crown princess has given birth to what appears to be a dragon. Forgive this old servant's ignorance, but please come and see for yourself. Without waiting for the crown prince's orders, servants had already rushed to the emperor's palace to deliver the joyous news. Spencer held the golden-scaled dragon baby, dumbfounded, standing by my bedside. His voice trembled. Jenny, is this our child? Our python clan at most produces dragon pythons. How could we give birth to a divine dragon? The court astrologer came earlier and compared it with records of divine dragons, confirming without doubt that this is indeed a divine dragon. I reached out my hand. Spencer quickly and carefully placed dragon baby into my arms. I looked into dragon baby's clear eyes and his strikingly familiar features. He was indeed my dragon baby from my past life. My tears fell onto his little face. Dragon baby wriggled slightly, probably trying to comfort me, though he couldn't speak yet. The outside suddenly erupted in noise, followed by the voice of a palace official announcing, "The emperor has arrived." Spencer hurried out of the inner chamber to the outer hall to receive the imperial presence. I held tightly onto dragon baby, unwilling to let go. "Mother," dragon baby suddenly spoke in a tender, childish voice, startling me. "Dragon treasure, in our past life, mother wronged you, causing you to be skinned alive." I choked back sobs. Dragon treasure transformed into a child and embraced me. "Mother, that life was a trial I had to endure, for it allowed me to ascend from a serpent dragon to a divine dragon. Moreover, I must thank you, mother. Without your body's nourishment, I could never have ascended to dragonhood." So that's how it was. Yet he endured the agony of having his tendons ripped out and scales scraped off. Just the thought of it still makes my heart ache so fiercely I can barely breathe. When the emperor ordered the eunuch to carry dragon treasure out for his inspection, the little dragon reverted to his newborn form. He obediently closed his eyes, as if in deep slumber. The emperor's hearty laughter echoed from outside. He repeatedly exclaimed, "Good, good, good, this is heaven bestowing divine blessings upon our beast continent." Eunuch Peter, issue the decree immediately. the divine dragon shall be named Auspicious Blessing, conferred as crown prince, and granted the golden seal and registry on the 8th day of next month. After a pause, he added, Jenny shall be enfeoffed as the crown princess consort, with the investiture ceremony also scheduled for the 8th of next month, a double celebration indeed. The crown prince's voice was the first to respond. I, your son, thank your majesty on behalf of Jenny. She is still weak after childbirth. Once she recovers, I will bring her to kneel and express our gratitude to you. When the crown prince returned to the inner chamber, his face was filled with joy. Jenny, did you hear? Father wants you to be my princess consort. I nodded and smiled. Yes, I also heard His Majesty intends to appoint Dragon Baby as the imperial grandson heir. Don't you feel a sense of crisis? What sense of crisis? It's possible that father might directly pass the throne to Dragon Baby when the time comes. In the previous life, the emperor deposed the crown prince and directly decreed that Dragon Baby inherit the throne. Although the outcome is uncertain in this life, I don't want them to turn against each other in a struggle for the throne. Spencer laughed heartily upon hearing this. I couldn't ask for more. Once the kingdom is handed over to that kid, the two of us can travel and enjoy life. How delightful. I've heard the Fox Beast Kingdom has breathtaking scenery, the Snow Leopard Kingdom is full of wonders, and Wolf Land has endless delicacies. He held me in his arms and said, I don't crave imperial power, but among my brothers, there's no suitable candidate to inherit the throne. That's why I'm competing for it. If our son can ascend to the throne, I'd be more than happy. After all, he's our child. He kissed my forehead and cooed affectionately. Hurry and recover your health so we can have a second and third child. I assigned the strongest shadow guards from the crown prince's residence to protect Dragon Baby, ensuring they stayed by his side at all times, hidden in the shadows. Although Susan cannot enter the palace now, I still need to be prepared for any eventuality. Spencer told me that when the palace eunuch went to the Smith family to announce the good news, my parents merely received the decree indifferently and didn't even give the eunuch any silver coins as a reward. Naturally, after returning to the palace, the eunuch reported my father and mother's reaction in detail to the emperor. Dragon Treasure is the emperor's most cherished golden grandson, and he couldn't wait to announce it to the world, letting everyone know that a divine dragon had descended upon the royal family. Yet, the Smith family, as maternal grandparents, reacted so indifferently. This planted seeds of discontent in the emperor's heart. Within 2 months, the emperor found an excuse to dismiss my father from his position as prime minister without assigning him any new official post, merely stating that he would reconsider when a suitable position became available. When Susan learned that I had given birth to a divine dragon in this life, she nearly went mad. She smashed everything in the mansion and then clung to George, demanding constant mating. George's robust physique, originally obtained through witchcraft, quickly weakened again under the relentless exploitation by his elder sister day and night, but this time, he had no chance to go to the Rat clan for another exchange. He was too ill to even get out of bed. Fortunately, Susan became pregnant again. She placed immense importance on this pregnancy, hiring an outside veterinarian twice daily to check the fetus's development through pulse diagnosis, as her belly grew day by day. George continued to decline, until eventually he could no longer swallow even broth, his breath growing fainter and weaker. If Susan had spared some thought for George at this time and given him more nourishing medicine, he might have lived a few more years, even if in a weakened state. But Susan paid him no attention at all, letting his illness take its course without even sending a servant to care for him. George had long been stripped of his noble status. The servants originally assigned by the palace were all dismissed, and he no longer received royal stipends or rewards. The vast mansion was sustained solely by Susan's dowry. Now that Susan no longer cared for him, he could only lie in the empty, vast house waiting for death. On the day the eldest sister went into labor, George breathed his last. This birth was even more difficult than the last. But after 3 days and nights of struggle, she only gave birth to a pair of densely squirming white worms. The servants were terrified and fled in all directions. The eldest sister fainted dead away upon seeing the tiny worms crawling over her legs and belly. When she woke up again, she heard the news that George had died. She murmured to herself, why can't I bear a dragon python even after marrying the green snake? Could it be that that wretched woman is the one who can bear a dragon python? She suddenly struggled to sit up. No, impossible. How could that lowly wench possibly bear a dragon python? It's impossible, it must be a coincidence. I must find the crown prince, I must marry the crown prince. The servant said she had gone mad, a widow actually daring to dream of marrying the crown prince. However, when the palace matron came to report these things she had learned by bribing the servants in the crown prince's household, I still became alert. Susan is simply a madwoman. In the previous life, she could lurk near Dragon Baby's secluded retreat to kill him, and in this life, there's no guarantee she wouldn't commit some heinous act. I had the crown prince order increased patrols within the residence, paying special attention to goods purchased outside the palace or people delivering items from outside. Sure enough, just a few days after Dragon Baby was granted the Golden Seal and Golden Book, a group of embroideresses delivering embroidery to the palace caught my attention. She had disguised herself quite well, but I was far too familiar with her scent. Among a group of plainly dressed embroiderers, Susan kept her head down, her hair tied in a matronly bun, her face darkened with wrinkles. Her disguise was remarkably convincing. I quietly instructed the hidden guards to keep an eye on Susan's movements, ordering them to apprehend her immediately if she dared to leave the embroiderers' group. Sure enough, it didn't take long before the hidden guards caught Susan sneaking around near the Divine Dragon residence where Dragon Baby was staying. She was pinned firmly to the ground by the guards. I sat on the chair brought by the eunuch, looking down at her with disdain. Search her. Susan frantically pushed away the eunuch's hands wandering over her body and screamed hysterically at me. Jenny, you bitch, how dare you humiliate me like this? I'm your elder sister. Disrespectful words. Slap her 30 times, I ordered the matron standing nearby. Then, the matron rolled up her sleeves, grabbed Susan by the collar, and began slapping her back and forth. Susan struggled to curse me, but now she could only make muffled sounds. The eunuch found a slender divine whip hidden in her undergarments, the very whip that had bound Dragon Treasure and stripped him of his dragon tendons in the previous life. Without this divine whip, Susan would never have been able to get close to Dragon Treasure. I tucked the whip into my sleeve. It was a treasure, and though I longed to destroy it, the whip itself was innocent. The guilt lay with the one who wielded it. After 30 slaps, Susan's cheeks were already swollen and red, her eyes filled with venomous resentment as she glared at me. She was completely pinned down by the shadow guards, unable to move at all. Why could you give birth to a divine dragon? What sinister method did you use? Did you steal my fortune in exchange? It should have been me who bore the divine dragon. Her eyes seemed to spit fire, her entire being consumed by madness. I sneered. Has elder sister never known about the inner elixirs within us? She froze for a moment before shrieking. What inner elixirs? The inner elixirs mother sought for us. She obtained the dragon-born elixir for me, while yours was the siren's allure elixir meant to seduce men. But your elixir doesn't just drain men's vitality, it also consumes the fortune of your unborn child. Susan collapsed to the ground in shock, utterly disbelieving. No, it can't be. Mother loved me so much. How could she? How is that impossible? We're twins. Why can I give birth to divine dragons while you only produce all sorts of bizarre creatures? You might as well go back to the Smith family and ask them. When Susan was thrown out, her face still wore an expression of disbelief. In her heart, her parents had always favored her unconditionally. How could they possibly do anything to harm her? 3 days later, a servant from the Smith family came to deliver the news of mourning. It was said that both father and mother perished in the fire, their bones burned to blackened charcoal. I gave some silver to the steward eunuch, asking him to arrange for someone to collect father and mother's ashes and bury them casually on any hillside. This could be considered repayment for their care in raising me. The fire was set by Susan. When she confronted Mother, Mother suddenly remembered the grand astrologer's final warning. Overwhelmed, she collapsed to the ground, wailing loudly and blaming herself for everything. Hearing her mother admit it with her own mouth, she naturally believed her mother was the culprit behind her inability to bear a divine dragon. In a fit of rage, she set fire to the Sioux residence and calmly escaped. But what she didn't know was that this marked the beginning of her hell. Since she had killed a court official, though her father had been temporarily stripped of his position by the emperor, he was still a government official. Susan became a wanted fugitive throughout the city. She could only hide and flee all day long. Her stunning beauty and the sweet feminine scent surrounding her attracted many wandering snakes eager to mate with her. Her inner core would absorb the essence of these men, making her increasingly radiant and alluring. In this vicious cycle, she became a woman known to be available to all. Perhaps this is her destined fate. Rather than killing her outright, letting her be entangled by these filthy snakes day after day, stripped of all future and hope, serves as better retribution for her murder of Dragon Treasure and me in our past life. Time flies, and 6 years have passed in the blink of an eye. My Dragon Treasure has grown into a graceful young man. In this lifetime, The Emperor once again stripped Spencer of his crown prince title, though it was at his own request. Now the Emperor personally handles state affairs with Dragon Treasure, preparing to hand over the kingdom to him when he comes of age at 10. Because I gave birth to Dragon Treasure, my inner elixir has completely vanished, and my suppressed appearance is gradually being restored, though I know I may never bear another child as exceptional as Dragon Treasure. I will love any child of mine and Spencer's dearly. Now that we're free from official duties, we've begun traveling through the realms of various beasts. At last, in this lifetime, I met the right person and did the things I truly wanted to do. How could the word carefree possibly sum it all up? After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.